Welcome to the scariest village in the world. This story is scary. The scariest village in the world. This story is going to make you never go to a village ever again. I'm your host. I hope you are subscribed. Once upon a time, I was searching for some alone time. I was just looking for peace somewhere to write, maybe find myself again. So I spent hours online looking for a secluded cabin, something remote and quiet, and finally I found it. On the other side of the country, nestled deep in the woods, was a small cabin with a clearing. The listing called it a chance to commune with nature. I didn't hesitate. I booked it right away. But as soon as I got there, I knew I should have hesitated because that place never wanted visitors. As soon as my car passed the gate, it felt like the trees themselves were reaching out, trying to grab me, dragging me into the dark woods. I told myself it was probably just trees and continued on. When I finally reached the clearing, I noticed something. There was no house number, there was no name, and even the GPS couldn't get a signal, so I decided to just forget about it and enjoy the beautiful view. It was then that I realized that the beauty was off-putting. It was unnerving. There were no birds singing, there was no wind blowing through the leaves. There was nothing but silence, and the deeper that silence went, the more I started to feel very uneasy. Then I started to notice more things. The nearby lake was filled with fog. I could barely see its surface. The dirt road leading to my cabin was overgrown with weeds, and the cabin itself seemed deserted. I opened the door, I stepped inside, and the feeling just got worse. Everywhere I went, everything I touched seemed heavy with meaning. Like the walls of the cabin had eyes watching me, judging me. There were no windows, there were no lights, there was only darkness. The only sound was the ticking of an old grandfather clock in the corner. Then suddenly, the clock chimed 12 times. And as it chimed, the darkness around me seemed to come alive. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around. There was nobody there. As the sun set, the cabin grew darker and colder. I lit a candle. I pulled out my laptop, and as I tried to watch a movie, I started hearing strange noises. The floorboards creaked. Things fell over. I could have sworn I heard voices whispering my name. That night, I slept with the lights on. In the morning, I got up and left. I wanted to explore the area, maybe find a cafe or maybe even a friendly face. But wherever I went, whatever I touched, I felt the same oppressive feeling. It was almost as if the entire forest was trying to keep me away from its secrets. At noon, I returned to the cabin. That's when I saw the sign, tucked under the door. Barely visible beneath the grime and cobwebs was a faded wooden sign that read "No trespassing." I looked closer and noticed something else. Carved into the wood above the sign was a strange symbol. It looked like a crescent moon, but it was twisted, distorted, and when I looked closer, it seemed to be screaming in pain. I don't know why, but I was compelled to follow that symbol. I searched everywhere, but it was no use. I couldn't find anything. As I walked around the edge of the clearing, I saw it. Hidden beneath the roots of an ancient oak tree was a narrow path. It was almost invisible, but I followed it anyway. After a few minutes of walking, I emerged from the trees, and there it was, the village. Now, at first glance, it looked like any other village. There were small houses huddled together, a dirt road running through the center, and a weathered signpost at the crossroads. But something was off. The village was eerily silent. There were no birdsong, no children playing, not even the sound of crickets chirping in the evening. The streets were empty. The houses were dark. It was as if the entire village was abandoned, yet I could feel their presence watching me. I could sense their eyes boring into my skin. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it only got worse. I walked down the main street, past the empty houses, past the silent shops, until I reached the center of the village. And that's when I saw it, the biggest house in the village. Its windows were dark, its doors were locked, but I could feel something powerful, something evil emanating from within. And for some reason, I felt compelled to go inside. I knocked on the door, but nobody answered. So I tried the handle. To my surprise, it was unlocked. As I stepped inside, I was met with darkness. I couldn't see a thing, but I could hear whispers coming from the shadows, voices speaking in a language I didn't understand. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the room, extinguishing my candle and plunging me into total darkness. I panicked, stumbled backwards, and fell to the ground. As I lay there, I heard footsteps approaching. I tried to hide, but it was too late. A pair of icy cold fingers brushed against my neck. I screamed and ran for the door. But when I opened it, I found myself back in the street. The house was gone. All that remained was a crumbling stone wall and a twisted signpost. The wind picked up, swirling around me, and I could have sworn I heard voices chanting, "He is one of us now. He is one of us now." Shaken and confused, I wandered through the village. I needed to find someone, anyone to talk to, but there was no one around. Then I saw it, a small cottage at the end of the street. Its windows were glowing with warm light, and I could hear the sound of laughter coming from inside. I hurried towards it, hoping to find some answers, but as I approached, the laughter suddenly stopped. The windows went dark, and the door was slammed shut. I knocked timidly, but there was no answer. I tried the handle, it was locked. Then I saw it, a small gap in the wall where someone had pushed their way through. I squeezed through the opening and found myself inside. The room was cozy, filled with rustic furniture and warm fabrics, but there was no one in sight. Then I noticed something strange, a series of strange symbols carved into the wooden beams overhead. They looked like the markings I had seen earlier on the signpost and the cabin door. As I examined them, I felt a sudden chill. The hair on my arms stood on end, and I could have sworn I heard a voice whisper in my ear, "You should not be here." Terrified, I ran for the door, but when I opened it, I found myself back in the village. The cottage was gone. In its place was a crumbling stone wall and a twisted signpost. I was trapped. I was alone, and whatever this place was, it didn't want me here. I ran through the empty streets, past the silent houses, past the empty shops, desperate to find a way out, but no matter which way I turned, I ended up back where I started. The village was a labyrinth, a maze with no exit. I collapsed on the ground, defeated, knowing that I would never escape. That's when I saw it, a small figure standing at the end of the street. I struggled to my feet and walked towards it. As I approached, I realized it was an old woman. She was hunched over, her face hidden under a shawl. She turned and looked at me, and for a moment our eyes met. I saw fear in her eyes, but also determination. Before I could speak, she dropped something at my feet, a small piece of paper. Then she turned and disappeared into the shadows. I looked down at the paper. It was a note, and when I unfolded it, I saw a message written in shaky handwriting. "Leave before the black moon rises," it said. Leave before the black moon rises. But what did it mean? Why did she warn me? And where was the nearest road? I needed to get out of this place before whatever this black moon was rose, but the old woman was nowhere to be seen. I searched everywhere, but no one had seen her. They just stared at me with blank, emotionless eyes. Then I heard it, a strange humming sound coming from the forest. I turned and watched in horror as dozens of figures emerged from the trees. They were tall and thin, their faces hidden beneath long robes. They moved slowly, deliberately, their eyes fixed on the ground. They walked down the middle of the village, their humming growing louder, their steps more urgent. Then they stopped in front of me. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. I was frozen in fear as they approached. Then one of them stepped forward. He held out a hand, his fingers long and bony, and when he spoke, his voice was like the rustling of leaves. "Come with us," he said. "The ceremony is about to begin." I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was trapped. As the chanting grew louder, I closed my eyes and waited for whatever horror was about to befall me. I felt their hands on me, guiding me, leading me through the village. I heard the whispering voices getting louder. Then everything went black. I opened my eyes. I was lying on the ground. And all around me were the villagers. They had formed a circle, and in the center stood a tall stone monument. It was covered in strange symbols, the same ones I had seen in the cottage and on the signpost. The old woman was there too, kneeling beside the monument, and as I watched, she began to chant. Her voice was hoarse, but her words echoed with power. The others joined in, and their voices rose in a crescendo, shaking the ground beneath me. Fear gripped me. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with terror as I watched the ceremony begin. From the center of the circle, the villagers lifted the monument. It was huge, made of solid stone, and it was covered in strange symbols. The old woman stepped forward and placed her hands on it, and the chanting started again. Then from the center of the circle, something began to emerge. It was dark and shapeless, like a cloud of smoke, and as it rose higher, I could see its form taking shape. It was a creature unlike anything I had ever seen before. It had no face, just stretched skin and sharp teeth. Its mouth opened sideways, like a cracked smile. And when it breathed, I swear the air grew colder. It looked at me, and I felt my soul freeze. Then it turned back to the villagers and let out a roar that shook the heavens. The villagers cheered and fell to their knees in worship. They were praying to it, feeding it, offering it their devotion, and I realized with horror that this was no god. This was something evil, something dark, something that belonged in nightmares, not in reality. It demanded sacrifice, and the villagers were preparing to give it one. I watched in horror as they led a young girl forward. Her eyes were shut, her mouth was sewn shut. She was barely more than a child. They tied her to the altar, and the chanting began again. It was a slow, rhythmic chant, and it seemed to hypnotize the villagers. They swayed back and forth, their eyes glazed over, their minds focused on the creature, and as it raised its hand, I knew what was coming. I screamed, but my voice was lost in the wind. With a swift, brutal movement, it ripped the girl's throat open. She let out a silent scream as her life force drained away. The villagers cheered as the creature drank in her sacrifice. It grew stronger, its form solidifying, its eyes gleaming with power. Then it turned and looked at me, and I felt my blood run cold. It was coming for me. I ran, but no matter where I went, I couldn't escape. The path was blocked by villagers, their faces twisted with fanaticism. I tried to fight my way through, but they were relentless. They pushed me back, their eyes burning with a strange light. I stumbled backwards, my heart pounding in my chest, until I tripped and fell. As I lay there, I looked up at the sky. The moon was full and bright, shining down on the village like a beacon in the night. But something was wrong. It wasn't white. It was red, the color of blood, and it was smiling. I screamed and struggled to my feet. I had to get out of there. I had to escape before it was too late. But as I ran, I realized I was running in circles. The village was a maze. There was no escape. I collapsed on the ground, defeated. I was trapped, and as the creature approached, I closed my eyes and waited for the end. But it never came. I opened my eyes and looked around. The creature was gone. The villagers were gone. The village was silent. The only sound was the wind whispering through the trees. I got up and stumbled out of the village, back into the forest. As I walked, I could feel the oppressive presence watching me, waiting for me to turn back. But I kept going, desperate to escape that nightmare. Finally, I saw it, a break in the trees, a glimmer of light in the distance. I stumbled towards it, my heart pounding in my chest, and as I emerged from the woods, I saw it, a dirt road. I had escaped. That's when I saw it, the moon hanging low in the sky, big and red. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I ran onto the road and didn't stop until I reached a gas station.